You don't lose control because you're emotional. You lose control because you were trained.
What's happening to me? I can't control it. Why am I doing this? This isn't me!
From the first apology, from the first time you stayed quiet, from the first moment you learned that being agreeable felt safer than being honest, you weren't taught how to think, you were taught how to react. And now you call those reactions your personality. Look at your life, your relationships, your career, your confidence. How many times did you say yes when you meant no?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Why did I say that?
No. How many times did you explain yourself when you didn't owe anyone a reason? How many times did you stay silent because conflict felt dangerous? That wasn't maturity, that was conditioning. And here's the part. No one tells you. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not lost. You are trained. And training can be undone. This is not about motivation. It's about control. Not over others, over yourself. Because the moment you master your triggers, you stop being predictable. And predictable people are easy to manipulate. Predictable people don't notice when they are being steered. They think they are choosing. But their choices follow the same emotional tracks, same arguments, same apologies, same silences, same overreactions, same regrets. You don't repeat because you are stupid. You repeat because your nervous system learned faster than your mind, and the body never forgets what once kept it safe. Let's make this simple. Your body learned before your mind could question. Your body learned before your language existed. Your body learned when you were too young to analyze. And now you live inside that learning. That is why a tone can change your mood. That is why silence can feel violent. That is why a look can feel like rejection. That is why a message can ruin your entire day. You don't react to events, you react to meaning. Meaning you didn't choose. Meaning you never updated. Meaning that still runs your life. Triggers are not explosions. They are instructions. They tell your body what to do before your mind gets a vote.
Why am I triggered right now? I didn't even do anything. What the F?
Tighten, defend, shrink, attack, freeze, please, disappear. And after the reaction, your mind steps in and builds a story that makes the reaction sound reasonable. That's how people stay trapped. They don't see the program. They only see the justification.
Lisa hasn't called me in 2 days. Is she mad at me? Did she meet someone new, better than me? God, why am I even doing this again?
Here's what most people don't understand. You cannot change what you cannot observe. And most people don't observe. They narrate. They narrate their anger. They narrate their anxiety. They narrate their sadness. They narrate their defensiveness. But narration is not awareness. Awareness happens before the words. In the chest, in the stomach, in the jaw, in the breath. That's where the trigger lives. Not in thought, in sensation. And until you learn to feel before you speak, you will always speak for the trigger. Let me give you a modern example. You're scrolling. You see someone your age doing better than you. You feel a small contraction. Not anger, not sadness. Something quieter, something sharper. You scroll past, but the mood shifts. You don't say anything, but your energy changes. Later, you're short with someone. Later, you feel unmotivated. Later, you feel irritated. You blame the day. It wasn't the day, it was the moment you didn't notice. Or this, you get criticized. Not harshly, not gently, just enough. You feel heat, you smile, you nod. You say, yeah, I get that. Later, you replay it. Later, you feel resentful. Later, you wish you had spoken. That wasn't a confidence issue. That was a trigger choosing safety over self-respect. Or this, someone doesn't respond. You tell yourself you don't care, but you check again, and again, and again.
Why isn't she responding? It's been like 10 minutes. Is she ghosting me? Whatever. Dude, respond. Respond already. Shh.
That is not curiosity, that is attachment panic. Not because you're needy, because your nervous system learned that silence once meant loss. You don't have bad reactions. You have loyal reactions, loyal to an old version of you, a version that survived, a version that learned, a version that protected. But survival patterns are not leadership patterns. What once saved you can now limit you. Here is the brutal truth. Most people do not want to master their triggers. They want to feel better, they want relief, they want comfort, they want validation, but mastery is not comforting. Mastery is confronting, because it removes excuses, and excuses feel safer than responsibility.
Man, what the hell is wrong with you lately? Every little thing sets you off. You overreact to everything. I don't overreact. That's just how I am. People can take it or leave it.
Let's talk about strength. Strength is not volume. Strength is not aggression. Strength is not emotional dominance. Strength is the ability to feel pressure and not leak, to feel insult and not collapse, to feel anger and not explode, to feel fear and not retreat, to feel desire and not chase, to feel rejection and not beg. That is strength. Like standing in the middle of a hurricane or chaos and being in complete control. And that strength is built in milliseconds, in the moment you normally miss. Most people think they are choosing. They are not. They are reacting quickly enough to confuse reaction with choice. That is why awareness is everything, because once you see the trigger, it loses its authority. Not immediately, but inevitably. Let's talk about identity. People say, I'm just like that. I'm emotional. I'm anxious. I'm avoidant. I'm blunt. I'm sensitive. No, you are experienced, and experience can be updated. Identity freezes behavior. Awareness frees it. This is why some people never change. They defend their triggers as personality, and then wonder why their life never shifts. Now here is the part that separates leaders from reactors. Leaders feel the same triggers. They just don't obey them. They pause. They breathe. They choose. And the world feels different around them. Because unpredictable discipline is intimidating. People can manipulate emotion. They cannot manipulate awareness. And here is where most self-help lies. It teaches you what to think, not when to notice. Mastery is timing, not information.
When you feel triggered, pause, breathe. The reaction can wait. You're still reading those things? Well, they don't really seem to be helping.
You don't need better thoughts. You need better interruption. You need to catch the body. You need to catch the breath. You need to catch the urge before it becomes behavior, because the moment you can interrupt a trigger, you own it. And when you own it, you are no longer a passenger in your own life. Most people believe control comes from confidence. It doesn't. Confidence is just how you feel about yourself in a moment. Control is what you do when that feeling disappears. Anyone can feel confident on a good day. Mastery shows up on the bad ones. When you're tired, when you're irritated, when you feel dismissed, when you feel unseen, when you feel small. That's when triggers take over. Not because you're weak, because your nervous system is faster than your pride. Here's the part that stings. You don't fail because you don't know better. You fail because your body reacts faster than your standards. You can have the best intentions in the world. But when the trigger fires, your standards disappear, and habits speak. You apologize too quickly. You soften too fast. You explain too much. You laugh too early. You retreat too soon. Not because you chose to, because your nervous system remembered an old lesson. Let me make this clear. Triggers are not your enemy. They are evidence. Evidence of where you were trained. Evidence of what once mattered. Evidence of what once hurt. Evidence of what once protected you. The problem is not having triggers. The problem is letting them decide. Now let's talk about accountability. Real accountability is not blaming yourself. It's noticing yourself. It's saying, that reaction wasn't who I am. It was who I used to be. And then choosing again. Most people never do this. They either justify the reaction or they shame themselves for it. Both keep the trigger alive. Justification protects it. Shame strengthens it. Awareness weakens it. Here's what mastery actually looks like in real life. It looks boring. It looks quiet. It looks like someone pausing before responding. Saying less. Not rushing to defend. Letting silence sit. Choosing tone. Choosing timing. It looks like someone choosing restraint. People mistake that for weakness until they realize they can't move you. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't explode until they realize you don't collapse. Then they feel it. Then they respect it. Now let's talk about something most people never connect. Triggers don't just affect emotions. They affect money, they affect careers, they affect negotiations, they affect relationships, they affect leadership. Because every time you react unconsciously, you leak position, you leak authority, you leak stability. The person who stays calm in pressure situations becomes the reference point. The person who reacts becomes the variable. That's why two people can say the same words, and only one is taken seriously. It's not the words, it's the control behind them. Here's another truth. Your triggers don't just hurt you. They teach people how to treat you. Every apology teaches them you feel guilty. Every explanation teaches them you feel unsure. Every nervous laugh teaches them you feel unsafe. Every silence teaches them you don't hold ground. You are constantly educating people emotionally, not with intention, with reaction. And people learn quickly. They always do. This is why mastering triggers changes everything. Not because you become aggressive, because you become consistent, because your tone matches your words, because your presence matches your intention, because your boundaries match your value. Now let's talk about emotional strength. Emotional strength is not being unbothered. Emotional strength is being bothered and not leaking it. It's being able to feel pressure and still speak clearly. It's being able to feel anger and still choose restraint. It's being able to feel fear and still hold position. That's leadership. Not performance. Not dominance. Leadership. Now here is where most people quit. They notice a trigger, they interrupt it once, and then they think they're done. They're not. Triggers weaken through repetition, not insight. You don't defeat a pattern by understanding it. You defeat it by out-choosing it. Again, and again, and again. Until the nervous system learns something new. Your body does not learn through explanation. It learns through experience, through different outcomes, through repeated safety in new responses. That's why mastery feels slow at first, because you are teaching a system that was trained for years. And it doesn't trust you yet. But once it does, everything changes. Your reactions soften. Your impulses slow. Your clarity increases. Your confidence stabilizes. Your presence deepens. And you don't even realize it's happening. Until one day, you notice you didn't react, and it felt natural. That is the moment mastery becomes identity. Not forced, integrated. Now let's talk about something people don't like to admit. Many people secretly enjoy their triggers, because triggers give them stories. Stories about why they reacted. Stories about why they failed. Stories about why they stayed small. Stories about why they didn't change. Triggers provide emotional justification. Mastery removes it. And without justification, only choice remains. That's why mastery feels uncomfortable, because it removes excuses. But here's the trade. Excuses feel good now. Authority feels good later. People who master triggers do not feel superior. They feel stable, they feel grounded, they feel deliberate, they feel difficult to shake, they feel like themselves. Now let's talk about discipline. Discipline is not forcing behavior. Discipline is remembering who you decided to be. In the moment, it's hardest to remember. When you want to send that message, when you want to argue, when you want to withdraw, when you want to defend, when you want to perform, when you want to disappear. That moment is where discipline lives, not in the gym, not in productivity, not in slogans, in reaction. This is why most people never change. They try to change outcomes. They never change responses, and responses are where life actually happens. Now let's bring this back to you. Not in theory, in reality. Think of one situation you keep replaying. One conversation. One moment. One reaction. One silence. One regret. That moment didn't define you, but it showed you. It showed you where your trigger lives. That is not shame. That is information, and information is power. This is why I don't believe in motivation. Motivation fades, awareness remains. This is why I don't believe in hype. Hype excites, discipline transforms. This is why I don't believe in affirmations. Affirmations comfort. Practice changes. You don't need to change everything. You need to change one moment, then another, and one day, you will realize something quietly powerful. Your reactions no longer own you. You still feel, you still care, you still experience, but you decide. And that is what people feel around you. They don't feel dominance, they feel stability. They don't feel aggression, they feel certainty. They don't feel performance, they feel presence. And presence is what cannot be ignored. And before you think this is just mindset content, it's not. Triggers aren't philosophical, they're operational. They decide what you say when you're tired. They decide what you tolerate when you're lonely. They decide what you buy when you're insecure. They decide what you eat when you're stressed. They decide whether you lead or shrink when pressure shows up. That's why mastering them isn't self-help, it's self-command. Because if you don't command yourself, something else will. A person, a mood, a memory, a craving, a fear, something. Let's talk about the most common trigger on earth right now. Not anger, not fear, not jealousy. It's this, the need to be understood. People are starving to be understood. And because they're starving, they overreact when they don't get it. They text paragraphs. They explain too much. They defend too fast. They argue past the point of dignity, all because someone didn't understand them immediately.
I just want her to understand. Why won't you listen to me? Stop twisting my words. This is so frustrating.
But here's the truth. Being misunderstood is not danger. It just feels like danger. Because once for some people being misunderstood meant being punished. It meant being ignored. It meant being treated unfairly. So now you don't just want to be heard. You need it. And that need is the trigger. That need is what gets you in trouble. Because the need to be understood makes you easy to bait. If someone wants to control you, all they have to do is misrepresent you. And you'll jump. You'll correct. You'll argue. You'll chase the narrative. And suddenly you're performing for someone who doesn't even respect you. That's not strength. That's a hook in your nervous system. Here's a modern example. Someone leaves a comment. Not even a long one. Just a cheap shot. A misread. A straw man. A drive-by insult. And you feel it. You feel that heat. You feel that pressure. You tell yourself, I don't care. And then your fingers start moving. You start crafting a response. Not a response. A courtroom argument. Evidence. Context. Receipts. Sarcasm. You're trying to win. But what you're really doing is proving you can be controlled. You think you're defending your reputation. You're defending your trigger. Because the truth is, high-level people don't argue in comment sections. Not because they're better. Because they're not reactive. They don't feed hooks. They don't donate attention to disrespect. They choose where their energy goes. That's the whole game. Energy is currency. Triggers spend it without asking. Now let's talk about a trigger. People hate admitting. The approval trigger, the do you like me trigger. It shows up everywhere. It shows up when you send a message and wait for the reply. It shows up when you post something and check the numbers. It shows up when you say something in a group and watch faces. It shows up when you're with someone you secretly want to impress. And it makes you act strange. You overtalk. You oversmile. You self-deprecate. You soften your opinions. You pretend you don't care. You try to be easy. Then later you feel gross because you weren't being yourself. You were being strategic for approval. And the irony is, approval seeking kills respect. The more you need it, the less you get. Because neediness is readable. It leaks in tone. It leaks in timing. It leaks in the way you ask a question, like you're apologizing for asking it. So what do people do? They try to become confident. They try to hype themselves up. They try to fake it. That doesn't work. The approval trigger isn't solved by confidence. It's solved by internal authority, by a different relationship with your own mind, a relationship where you don't need external confirmation to stand by what you said. Here's a simple, modern moment. You're invited somewhere. You don't want to go, but you also don't want to disappoint anyone, so you say yes. And the second you say yes, you feel resentment. Not toward them, toward yourself, because you just taught yourself that your no doesn't matter. You just trained yourself to betray your own preference. That's what a trigger does. It gets you to betray yourself quickly. So you don't feel the tension of saying no. You avoid tension now. Then you carry resentment later. That's the trade. Triggers always offer short-term comfort with long-term cost. Always. Let's go into something that makes people uncomfortable. A lot of bad habits are not habits. They're triggers. Overspending is often not a money problem. It's an emotion problem. Scrolling isn't a time problem. It's a discomfort problem. Overeating isn't always hunger. It's regulation. Drinking isn't always addiction. It's avoidance. Porn isn't always sex. It's control. And I'm not moralizing any of that. I'm describing the mechanics. Because people love to talk about habits. Like they're random. They're not random, they're responses. If you want to change behavior, you don't just remove the behavior, you remove the need. And the need lives in the trigger. Let's take a common one. You've had a long day, you're tired, you're irritated, your brain is noisy, and you tell yourself you deserve something. A treat, a reward, a release. So you scroll, you snack, you buy, you drink. You do anything that numbs the noise. That is not you being weak. That is your nervous system trying to shut down stress. But if you do it unconsciously, you reinforce the loop. Stress appears, numbing happens, loop strengthens. Then you wake up the next day and feel disappointed. Then you get stressed again. Then you numb again. And the loop becomes identity. I have no discipline. No, you have a trigger loop you never interrupted. And the longer you let it run, the more automatic it becomes.
Ooh, free shipping. I worked all day. I deserve this. I'll start fresh tomorrow.
Now here's where this gets serious, because when your triggers control small things, you can hide it. You can call it a bad day. You can call it stress. You can call it your personality. But when triggers control big things, they destroy outcomes. They destroy careers. They destroy marriages. They destroy reputations. And the scariest part is how small the beginning is. It's never a big dramatic moment. It's a pattern. Small decisions that always go the same way. Let's talk about the disrespect trigger. Some people explode. Some people collapse. Both are reactions. Explosion is one kind of weakness. Collapse is another. Explosion says, I can't regulate. Collapse says, I can't hold ground. Both teach other people what to do with you. If you explode, people walk on eggshells or bait you for entertainment. If you collapse, people push you because they can. Either way, you're being moved. Mastery is not exploding or collapsing. Mastery is staying present and choosing the response that serves you, not the response that serves the trigger. Here's a real modern example. Someone makes a disrespectful joke. You feel the flash. You want to respond instantly. But the strongest move isn't a comeback, and it isn't a laugh. It's stillness. It's letting the moment sit. It's a look that says, we're not doing that. Not aggressive, not emotional, just clear. Most people can't do that because they think they must respond. They think silence is losing, but silence is not losing. Silence is refusing the frame, and frames are where power is. If someone hands you a childish frame, you don't have to accept it. You can leave it on the table. That is adult authority. Now let's talk about the conflict trigger. Some people avoid conflict like it's death. They'll do anything to keep things smooth. They'll lie politely, they'll agree and then resent. They'll say yes and then complain. They'll stay quiet and then withdraw affection. Because direct conflict feels dangerous, so they choose indirect damage. That's the tragedy. Avoiding conflict doesn't avoid pain. It just delays it and makes it uglier.
I was working, but I can pick it up if you really need me to. Ugh, why did I say yes? I literally can't stand her.
Mastery is being able to tolerate tension without becoming toxic. It's being able to say something clean and simple, no speech, no essay, no over-explaining, just truth, and then stop talking. That is the executive move, and I know what you're thinking. Easy to say. Yes, it is easy to say. It is hard to do, because triggers don't live in logic. They live in the body. You can know exactly what to do, and still not do it when the trigger hits. That's why you need practice. Not information, practice. The kind of practice that rewires response. Let's talk about relationships. Most relationships don't die from lack of love. They die from unmanaged triggers. One person feels criticized and goes cold. One person feels ignored and chases.
One person feels controlled and rebels.
One person feels abandoned and clings. Then they repeat it again and again. Two adults acting like their younger selves under pressure, and both think the other is the problem. Sometimes the other person is a problem, but even then, your triggers still decide how you handle it. That's the part people miss.
You said you'd handle it. It's always the same thing with you.
I was going to. You didn't give me a chance. You're always so quick to judge.
You don't actually hear me. You just defend yourself.
I just can't with you anymore. I'm going insane.
No. I can't with you anymore.
Mastery doesn't mean staying with the wrong person. Mastery means not losing yourself in the process. It means you can leave clean, speak clean, hold ground clean, without drama, without chaos, without begging, without revenge. That is a rare kind of strength. Now let's talk about work. Work triggers are brutal because they're constant. You get an email with a tone, and you feel it. You read disrespect into it, or dismissal, or threat, and your whole day shifts. You either overreact and fire back, or you collapse and over-accommodate. You either become defensive, or you become invisible, and then you wonder why your career stalls. Your career doesn't stall from lack of skill, it stalls from emotional leakage, because leadership is emotional predictability. Leaders are stable, they don't take every tone personally, they don't react in public, they don't leak insecurity in meetings, they choose their timing, they choose their words, they choose the frame, and the room feels it. Here's a simple example. Someone challenges you, not respectfully, not aggressively, just challenging. And you feel your heart rate jump. You start talking faster. You start explaining. You start proving. That's the trigger. The need to prove yourself. And it makes you look less competent, even when you are competent. Because competence with anxiety looks like uncertainty. Mastery is being able to slow down in that moment, to speak less, to answer the question, not the emotional pressure, to pause and let the silence do its job. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is control. Now let's talk about the biggest trigger of the modern era. Comparison. Comparison is a silent addiction. You don't just compare success. You compare bodies, relationships, money, confidence. You compare your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. And your nervous system doesn't know it's fake. It just feels smaller. So you either grind out of shame or numb out of defeat. Both are reactions. Neither is mastery. Mastery is choosing a standard that is internal, not based on what you saw online, not based on what someone else claims, internal. Because when your standard is internal, comparison loses power. It becomes information, not identity. Let's be blunt. Most people are not struggling because life is too hard. They're struggling because they're being emotionally used by everything around them. They're being used by ads, by algorithms, by other people's moods, by their own childhood conditioning, by every little spike of discomfort. They can't sit with it. So they react, they spend, they scroll, they snap, they apologize, they numb, then they wonder why they feel weak. They feel weak because they have no space between impulse and action. That's what mastery gives you. Space. And space is freedom. This is what I mean when I say this isn't motivation. Motivation is an emotional spike. Mastery is a new operating system. It's not about feeling pumped. It's about being harder to move, harder to bait, harder to manipulate, harder to knock off center. And here's the part that makes this worth it. When you master triggers, you don't just feel better. You become more effective, more direct, more respected, more stable, more attractive. Because stability is attractive. Not in a cheesy way, in a real way. People are drawn to someone who isn't leaking, someone who isn't begging, someone who isn't reactive, someone who doesn't need to win every moment, someone who can hold themselves. That's leadership energy. Not loudness, not aggression, leadership. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, what do I actually do with this? Not a step-by-step lecture, not a worksheet, just one truth you can use immediately. Start hunting the moment right before you react, not the moment after, the moment before. The breath shift, the jaw tension, the urge to speak fast, the urge to apologize, the urge to explain. That moment is the door. If you catch the door, you can choose. If you miss it, you react. And then you call it personality. This is why people who master triggers look calm. It's not because they don't feel things. It's because they feel them early. They catch it sooner. They intercept it. They don't wait until the emotion is driving the car at 80 miles an hour. They catch it in the driveway. That's the whole advantage. Early interception. And yes, this takes practice. Not years. Not months of spiritual nonsense. Practice. Small repetitions. Daily moments. Because triggers fire daily. So mastery can be trained daily. If you stop pretending you don't have them. If you stop defending them as just who you are. If you stop calling them personality. They are not personality. They are conditioning. And conditioning can be rewritten.
You forgot to pick me up. You let me down again.
I got busy with work and lost track of time. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm sorry, you're right. How can I make it up to you?
No, I'm sorry, I overreacted. I love you.
One day at a time, one trigger at a time.
Let me leave you with something real. Not theory, not metaphor, not philosophy. Real. You are not behind in life because you lack talent. You are not behind because you lack intelligence. You are not behind because you lack opportunity. Most people are behind because they are emotionally predictable. They react the same way in the same situations. They repeat the same loops. They carry the same patterns. And then wonder why nothing changes. Change does not come from effort. It comes from interruption. When you interrupt a trigger, you interrupt a future. Every reaction is a small vote. A vote for the same outcome. Or a vote for a different one. And here's the part most people never hear. You don't need to win every moment. You need to notice them. Because noticing builds space. And space builds choice. And choice builds authority. Authority is not about controlling others. Authority is about not being controlled. You will still feel anger. You will still feel fear. You will still feel desire. You will still feel sadness, but they will no longer decide. And that changes everything. Your words, your tone, your posture, your boundaries, your timing, your silence, your presence. People will start responding differently, not because you demanded it, because you changed. And the strangest part, they won't know why, but they will feel it. They will feel that you are not reactive. They will feel that you are not chasing. They will feel that you are not performing. They will feel that you are not leaking. They will feel something rare. They will feel someone who is choosing. That is mastery. You are not broken. You are trained. And training can be changed. You are not weak. You are untrained. And training can be learned. You are not lost. You are reactive. And reactivity can be mastered. The only question left is this: will you keep reacting, or will you start choosing? Because every life is built from moments, and every moment is built from reactions, and every reaction is a choice. Once you can see it, this is not about becoming someone else. It is about finally becoming the one who decides. That is what mastering your triggers really means. And if this resonated, it's not because I convinced you, it's because you recognized yourself. That recognition is the beginning of authority, not over others, over yourself, and that is the only kind that lasts.
Enough is enough. I control me. One day at a time, one trigger at a time, only you have the power.
Thanks for being here. If this hit something real for you, I want you to know you're not imagining it and you're not alone. I wrote a book called Master Your Triggers to walk you through this work step by step. How to notice the moment it starts, how to pause before the reaction takes over, and how to choose differently on purpose. This isn't motivation, it's practice. And when you practice it, it works. If you're ready to go deeper, you can get the book by clicking the link in the description.